Perfetto. Okay. So, good afternoon, and thank you to invite me to present my work on here. To this seminary, I would like to thank you, Paola, Marcos, and Alvaro, to invite me. So today we'll present one of the main topics of my PhD research. This is soft regression trees. This is a machine learning model. We'll present a model variant and a decomposition training algorithm. So since you asked me, where am I in this plot? I'm in the right top corner concerning working on optimization, machine learning, statistics. So the blue part. So what is a decision tree? It's a classical machine learning model and is widely used for two tasks that are classification and regression. So what does it mean, classification and regression? It means that we want to predict, in the case of classification, the class label of an input vector, or in the case of regression, a continuous response. Could be the income in the case of continuous, or a label like female or male or whatever, cancer, not cancer. And a tree, decision tree, a deterministic tree has this type of structure that is a flowchart structure. That is a basically oriented graph. And the green nodes represent branching nodes that are the decision rule. They are based on combination of the features of the input vector. And according to the decision rule, each input vector follow a path. In the case of deterministic, a single path from the root to the bottom. In the red nodes that represent the leaf. In this leaf, we have a class label or a continuous response according to the task. Why using decision trees? Because they are easy to interpret. Also, non-expert can understand what is the idea of follow a decision rule and give a prediction. They are able to achieve high level of accuracy. In particular, nowadays, the new formulation are able to achieve really good level of accuracy. And last, they satisfy conditional computational property. That is an important property in machine learning models. And the idea is that during the prediction, you don't need to consider the overall architecture of the model, but you focus only on a subset of the parameters, only a portion of the architecture. And this leads benefit in terms of statistics, statistical benefits, and also computational benefits. So as I said before, at each branch node there is a decision rule, and the decision rule can be the classical one, the red one, the sharp rule, hard, or can be soft. And in the case of soft, the idea that we have a probability, in this case is a cumulative distribution function, a sigmoid function, that establishes the probability to go to the left or to the right at each branch node. This leads to different type of trees. The classical deterministic tree that satisfies the conditional computation, but they need to train them, you need to define a formulation that is not differentiable because you need to introduce binary variables, and so it's really hard to train them. On the other side, for soft trees, the good advantage is that you can have additional information in terms of probability, but they do not often satisfy the conditional computation because the prediction involves the overall tree. But the good part is that they are differentiable. So you can define an error function that is smooth, and you can use the classical first order, second order method optimization like gradient descent, Newton, whatever. So I didn't mention before, but building an optimal decision trees is an NPR problem. So in the past, several greedy approaches have been proposed. But recently, thanks to the incredible enhancement in the computational power of the optimization solver, different authors try to propose way to globally optimize decision trees. And we can distinguish two main different approaches. The mixed integer linear optimization approach that in general are focus on building deterministic trees. So the one that I showed you before. And the main work, the state of the art is the work of Bertsima and Seddon for regression multivariate trees. Concerning the nonlinear optimization approach, to the best of our knowledge, the first work is the work of Suarez and Lutzko, where they propose an error function, a smooth function for both classification and regression tasks. There is also the work of Irsoy, that they try to induce soft rule in the greedy approach. But lastly, the work that was proposed here in this department was the work of Blanquero with Emilio, Cristina, and Dolores, where they try to propose a formulation to build optimal soft regression trees. And this is the approach that I will show you today. So my contribution are basically, we try to propose a new model variant that satisfies the conditional computation in which the prediction is based on only a single leaf node, so maintaining this good property. We also propose a node-based convergent decomposition scheme with reassignment heuristic to train this type of model. And if I have time, I would like also to mention something concerning the possibility to introduce fairness in such models. That is a crucial aspect in nowadays. So what is a soft tree? A soft regression tree is a classical tree as I showed before, but the main difference is that when we take as input a vector xi, we need to define for each branch node PIT, this is the probability for input vector I to fall on the left side of branch node T. And the probability is expressed as a sigmoid function, which takes as input the linear combination of the features of the input vector and an intercept. So the omega are the variables we need to optimize. Assuming that, we can define capital PIT, that is the probability for an input vector to fall in a leaf node, and is given by the product of all the probabilities encountered along the path. In this way, we can define for the regression task at each leaf node distinct linear regression that establish a continuous response that are based on the beta variables. So the omega and the betas are the variables that we need to optimize, to tune for the model. So the previous SRT formulation, the ones of Suarez et al. And Blanquer et al., are based on the idea that the final prediction of the tree is a weighted combination of all the linear regression associated to each leaf node. So at the end, the prediction, the final prediction y hat I, is just a weighted combination of the linear regression of the leaf, where the weights are the probability. In this way, the final response is deterministic, because the probability is used only as a weight for the prediction. And to train this type of model, they propose this error function in which they usually you sum over your training set, but the green part is the most important part, in which for each data point, you try to minimize what? The square of the difference between the actual response y high and the weighted combination, the linear regression prediction. So as I mentioned before, this output is deterministic and do not satisfy the conditional computation because you need the overall tree topology to give you a prediction. Our idea was to try to maintain the soft nature, but exploiting the path in a way that we can define a single leaf node prediction. An idea that we want to exploit the probabilities that are encountered along the path, and we define the prediction as the one associated to the leaf node obtained following the highest branch. So in this case, xi goes firstly on the right and then on the left, and you make a prediction with a single linear regression. To train this type of model, we make a slight change in the objective function. You see in the red one, you see now we have the square of the difference of yi and the y hat it, that is the linear regression associated to the t leaf node. And the main difference is that here, p is used as a real probability because it's a confidence for that prediction. And in this way, we can maintain the conditional computation. So, of course, if you look at both objective function, ours and the ones of Suarez and Blanquero, it's clear that the problem is highly non-convex because you have all these sigmoids that are multiplied to each other. So the point is that if you use an off-the-shelf solver, in general, you end up with poor solution, and it requires a lot of computational time to have a good quality solution. You have to do a lot of starting point and hope God that you have a good solution. And the good part of our objective function is that our objective function is amenable to decomposition, because since we have distinct prediction associated to distinct leaf nodes, the idea is that we can train the model decomposing it with respect to the nodes. And the idea is that at each iteration, we select only a subset of variables that we want to optimize, keeping fixed all the others. The idea is to split the problem with respect to the branch and leaf node variables, so the omega and the beta variables that I mentioned before. And at each iteration, we consider only a subset of nodes, branch node and leaf node, keeping fixed all the others. And the leaf node variables and the branch node are optimized separately. As a stopping criterion, then you can use a tolerance or a number of iterations. So just to give you an idea, if we can pick randomly during the optimization a branch node, in this case, if the branch node is not the root one, we are going to consider all the variables associated to the subtree rooted to that branch node. So in this case, we select t equal to 3, so we consider this subtree, the red and green variables. We first optimize the omega 3, omega 6, omega 7 variables, and only after the optimization of the red variables, we consider the green one, that are the one associated to the least square. And the good part of this decomposition is that since all the other variables are kept fixed, and we optimize the leaf only after the optimization of the branch node, the problem with respect to the leaf node is just a classical least square problem and can be separated, can be optimized in parallel, because each linear regression is split, so you don't need to optimize them all together. While when we consider the root node, since the root node, the subtree associated to the root node is the overall tree, we just optimize the single omega 1 variables. And this scheme was able to yield substantial speed up and reduce testing R square. Testing R square, the R square is a measure to establish the performance of the tree model, and the idea is that the higher, the better. But still, was this optimizing such soft regression trees with this decomposition scheme leads to weak generalization, because we have seen a lot of solutions in which all the data points were routed to a single leaf node without exploiting the tree topology. So the idea was to introduce in the algorithm, the optimization, a sort of reshuffling, a sort of reassignment of data points during the optimization. So the idea was that the goal, I will just give you an idea, is to, when I select a branch node, then I know how many data points are in that branch node, fall in that branch node. A possibility is to consider to reroute some data points, an input vector, in a way to establish a sort of balance between the children of the branch node. So the idea is to reroute them, reroute the data points, to balance, and to do that, we need to introduce a measure. We can consider a lot of measures of imbalance, but the easy is just the ratio between the number of data points in the branch node and the number of data points in the children, and see which is the lowest. And to do that, to tune the omega variables of that branch node that is in balance, we can apply a classical weighted logistic regression to try to balance the omega terms. So I will not give you other details, I just removed some slides, but the idea was that the decomposition with the reassignment heuristic was able to effectively balance the input vectors among the leaf nodes, so exploiting the tree topology. And we were also able to achieve remarkable testing R squared. We also, since the problem is still highly non-convex, really ugly, it's an ugly problem. We propose an initialization strategy that is based on the classical clustering k-means method. And in general, the results were good when we have seen that we are able to reduce slightly the testing error. So since we are in a mathematical department, I have to show some math. The only theory. The idea is that we try to prove that our node decomposition scheme converges to a stationary point, because it's not obvious. The problem is highly non-convex. Maybe we can just oscillate and we don't have any guarantee that we find a stationary point. So just this theorem to say, okay, we did the math. And the idea is that under mild assumption, that is, you have to be sure that you periodically consider the branch and leaf node variables, that the partial update of the omega and beta variables with respect to the loss function will decrease the loss function. So you can guarantee that you always use such a way that the step length of your method, of your line search method, is in a way that it will decrease. And also the fact that from a certain step, set iteration, you will stop reassigning data points under this mild assumption. You can guarantee that the sequence of the omega and beta generated by the algorithm has a limit point. The loss function value sequence converges to a limit, and every limit point of this sequence is a stationary point for the tree. Of course, it's a local optimal, not global, but we cannot have any guarantee of globality. So just to show you that we did all the homework, we tried to test our model on 15 benchmark dataset. We used the test-finger square. We applied four-fold cross-validation to split the dataset in training and testing. And for each fold, we ran 20 different starting solutions. And so now the result that I will show you are just the average over all the 80 runs for each data point. So I will show you some table, but just really quickly to give you an idea, we make some comparison. Here I have a result for 3 on depth equal to 2, but we did the experiment with higher level of depth. This is the comparison between our proposal and the one of Blanquer et al. So the state of the art of the software regression tree, the alternative state of the art. And you can see in the bold, or each row represents a data set. This is the testing square, on the bracket the standard deviation, the time, and you see that always we are able to achieve a substantial improvement in testing square, comparable, often lower computational time, and we are able to avoid any type of testing R square, negative testing R square. That means that the model is not able to find a solution that makes sense. We also try to compare with the state of the art of the classical deterministic univariate and multivariate trees, so the work of Bertsimas and Dunn. And just to give you an idea, but we were able to achieve still noticeable improvements, on average better testing R square, but the most important stuff that we are able to achieve a remarkable speed up. If you look at the last row, and look at the time, we are able to reduce the computational time of more than 1 order of magnitude. So we did other homeworks, as usual. We tried to compare with other models. We did with the HME, that is another model that can be seen as a soft trees. We did also with random forest, is a classical ensemble of tree model in machine learning. And the message is that we are able to achieve higher level of accuracy on average. And in the case, in comparison with random forest, since we are dealing with just one tree, is more interpretable than a forest, because random forest is an ensemble of a lot of division tree. Univariate, so more easy to interpret, but a lot of them. The last thing that I would like to share with you is that we try to focus on another important topic, is fairness. Fairness nowadays is important, since there are biases in dataset. So there is the problem that machine learning models can amplify the bias in dataset. So we try to see if we are able to introduce some fairness constraint in our tree. And the idea is that consider the dataset, and you have a subset of input vector that belongs to a sensitive group based on genders or ethnicity or whatever. The goal is that we want to guarantee there is a decision maker that asks us, you need to guarantee that the expected prediction for the sensitive group and the expected prediction for those who would not belong to the sensitive group must be at least as much as possible comparable. So the idea is to impose that the average of the prediction of the tree for the group and the complementary, the difference is not so big, and you can tune with the threshold row. You can decide what is the level of difference. The cool part that this is a linear constraint, but formally you're adding this linear constraint is a non-convex linear formulation, really ugly. But since we define, we designed this decomposition scheme, and the goal is fairness. The goal of fairness concerns only the prediction. We can impose these constraints only when we optimize the leaf nodes. That is the least square problem. So we are imposing a constraint in a classical convex problem, and adding a linear constraint in a quadratic convex problem is easy. So it doesn't affect the computational time. We made a lot of experiment on dataset, mainly 3 datasets that are for problem of fairness, and we have seen that it is able to have an impact both in predictive both in the train and the test set, so it does work, and is able to reduce the fairness with affecting a bit the testing square, but this is normal. So just to conclude, I will not tell you what I already present you, but we would like to extend this type of formulation to handle different type of regression problem, like quantile regression, in order to build models that are more robust with respect to outliers, for example. And another stuff that we really would like to do is the possibility that nowadays no one did, is the possibility to introduce pruning in soft trees. That is something that is already done for classical deterministic tree, but no one did, for what I know, on soft trees. I don't know if I have still time. No? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for talking. It was just 20 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing.
So, any questions? Well, before I ask the questions online, if there are any, I would like to ask you about the theorem that you have. Do you have an estimate of the rate of convergence?
No, we didn't. This is the only thing that we didn't. We didn't work on the rate of convergence. Something that I really would like to do. We were thinking with my co-authors to do that, but we didn't. I can tell you that the idea of the decomposition involved a lot of check with classical line search method to guarantee that if you don't decrease the objective function, you can use another line search method that can help you. So maybe it's something that we can do easily because we already have an idea of what is the convergence rates of alternative line search method that you can use, but we didn't. Okay. Thank you. Some of you have some question. I'm waiting a question from Marcos. Marcos. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks again to the speaker.
Thank you.
Let's go for the